Well, good evening. It is Friday night, and we have a really good live. I am going to be talking to you about sugar, and we are going to have our amazing director of nutrition, the director of our program, Rita, is going to talk about why sugar is more addictive to heroin. And here she comes, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, here she comes. Watch out, boys, she'll chew you up. Whoa, here she comes. She's a sugar eater.
Hi.
Whoa, here she comes. Hi.
How you doing,
I was
Emily?
singing Hall and Yep, I was singing Hall and Oates. I was singing Watch out, she'll chew you up. Okay. So we are getting on tonight. This is one live that you absolutely do not want to miss. Um, Starting next week, we'll be streaming some of our live webinars and educational. These are educational videos. This is free value, free content for you guys. People pay thousands of dollars to hear some of the seminars and information that we're about to share with you tonight. Next week, we'll have a more organized format, so you're not seeing us like half and half on the screen here. But tonight, this is how we're doing it on a Friday night. I'm calling in from Salina, Texas, and Rita is calling in from Toronto-ish, Canada. So we are going to talk about my most favorite subject. I'm going to talk for a bit, Rita, and then I'm going to bring you on to sort of take over this call because I know that this is something you're passionate about as well. So let's talk about sugar. Let's talk about Reese's Pieces. Let's talk about Rice Krispie treats, Junior Mints, cakes, cookies, ice cream, graham crackers, and not even, and some of these things aren't even sugary things that we're going to talk about, things that are processed in sugar in the body. Why is this killing us? Why is this stopping our success? So I am Emily Phillips, and I am a sugaraholic. There's a reason why I cannot have a piece of my mom's chocolate cake without going back 30 minutes later. There is something that happens when the sugar hits your palate. There is literally something that happens to your brain instantly, very similar to nicotine, very similar to meth, cocaine, heroin, opiates, anything that you could possibly imagine. It's coming. It is affecting your brain, and it is affecting your weight loss. And there's so much that we could talk about with this topic, but I don't think it's talked about enough. We're also going to talk about not just regular sugar, but we're going to talk about artificial sweeteners. I know that is a very big topic that Rita is extremely passionate about. And I think some of you are going to be surprised at some of the answers that she's got to give. So we welcome the questions tonight. Rita, let's start with just this. What happens to the body when you have a bite of a Snicker bar?
Right. Well, one of the problems is that we as humans are designed, our very survival depends on our love affair with sugar. If you think about it in primitive times or just before there were grocery stores, sugar means survival because it gives you energy, right? But we have those same needs and drives, except we have, 20 grocery stores within 10 minutes of our house. And then we have foods that, even if you wanted to make bread 100 years ago, you would burn calories. It would be a big ordeal. And you would have a little bit of bread to share with the family. And so, you're not going to, you can't, like, you can down 3 Snickers bars. It's not going to be expensive. It's easy to access. And so our body is designed to crave it from our brains. And then once we actually have it, we produce insulin, which is a fat storing hormone. And so once you produce that insulin, you're literally storing fat. Your insulin goes up, your blood sugar comes down because you've just eaten the Snickers bar, except you require a lot of insulin, and your insulin brings the sugar down. And guess what happens an hour or two later? You want more sugar. And that is all physiology happening. So our physiology does not match our current lifestyle, which is grocery stores nearby and processed foods. And we don't walk to the grocery store either. We drive, right? Even in Texas, it's hot, so you're driving, right? In Canada, we're driving
Right.
because it's cold. Either way, you're driving, right? So you're not expending
Right.
calories. Then when you finish the Snickers bar with your blood sugar high, you might get a bit of energy, but very quickly you tank. And so you're tired. And so what happens when you're tired? Your body says, I need more sugar. And if you're on this roller coaster day after day after day, eventually that insulin needs to go to such a high level to bring your blood sugar down that eventually your blood sugar is unable to come down fully. And that's the beginning of pre-diabetes. And eventually, if it keeps going, your pancreas can no longer keep up. And then you get full-blown type 2 diabetes. This is not how type 1 diabetes happens. So let's not confuse that. And so, and this is a big strain on your liver. And it can be a very difficult cycle to break.
So let me ask you something, Rita. I mean, thankfully, I don't have diabetes, but there are times, especially when I'm restarting a program in the evening, I get this really strange sensation like I need to have sugar. Like it's almost a shaky feeling.
Mm.
What is happening there?
So
Do you
that's
know?
a lot of times when our blood sugar is going up and down all day long, even if we're not diagnosed with diabetes. When you go to the doctor to get tested for blood sugar, it's very, very rare where a doctor tests your insulin levels. Why? Because it's expensive and it's just not something that's a standard thing to test. Therefore, so when you're eating food all day long, you don't know if you have two people and they both have the same blood sugar after the same drink, you don't know how much insulin person A needed to bring it down versus person B. And so if you need a lot of insulin to bring it down, then it may come down too low. And that's why you're feeling shaky and a little bit like, oh my gosh, I need more sugar. You may be producing a lot of insulin. And over time, this can lead to prediabetes. And by the time
So let
that
me
happens,
go ahead.
nobody knows that you've been struggling for a long time because no one's tested your insulin. They've only tested your blood sugar. So if you produce enough insulin, bring your blood sugar down properly, your blood test looks fine, but your body might be really struggling to keep itself fine.
So let me ask you this. Is this all in my head? I know sometimes after Thanksgiving and I've had several, pieces of pie and cake, I later become very irritable, agitated, and I wake up with heart palpitations. What's
Yeah.
happening?
Again, you've produced a lot of insulin. Your blood sugar is coming down, probably coming down a little bit too low. You may be particularly sensitive, which is actually a blessing, because if you're sensitive, you're more likely to try and do something about it. If you feel okay most of the time, you're not going to be motivated to change anything. I mean, this is why you are so passionate about health and making people feel better, because you've had your own struggles, right?
Yes, and one of the things I've noticed is when I eliminate sugar, my ADD, the symptoms of, and we don't make any medical claims, we're not doctors, but I noticed the ADD symptoms shrink.
Yeah, your brain is completely affected by sugar. It's very, very difficult to be focused and operating properly when you're putting sugar into your body. And that's because of
Why do they
insulin and sugar.
why do they say that sugar is more addictive than heroin?
I mean, I don't know if it's literally more addictive, but it is very addictive. The brain completely lights up when sugar comes in. As I said, we are designed as humans that sugar was at one point, if you found some honey or a lot of fruit, it's much easier for you to get a hold of that than it is, to find an animal and kill it and go through that whole process. So sugar is quick energy. And if your survival depends on it, then as a species, those that can deal with the sugar the best are going to survive. Unfortunately, as I said, we're not set up for that as a world.
So when I think of sugar, I think of cupcakes, pie, soft drinks, things like that. Are there other kinds of foods out there that actually process the same as sugar that we just think of?
Yeah. And one of the things you just mentioned is soft drinks. People don't realize this, but your brain doesn't register the calories from a liquid. And so if you're drinking soft drinks all day long or juices or health drinks that appear like they're healthy, your brain doesn't. So let's say a drink was 300 calories. You're not going to eat 300 calories less because you drank that. So liquid sugar, which is, basically soft drinks, is one of the worst things you can put into your body because it spikes your blood sugar very high. You require a huge amount of insulin to bring it down, and it goes into your system very quickly. A lot of people have heard of the word glycemic load or glycemic index. We're learning that we need to delve more into that. But simplistically, if you drink the soft drink by itself versus if you had it with some protein and fat, it wouldn't spike your blood sugar quite as much. I
So
don't
my
feel
husband,
that you should
my
do that.
husband who it was interesting. My husband, who's a physician, says something that he tells parents. He says, please stop giving your kids so much juice.
Yeah, I mean, juice
He's
is,
very passionate about that, and he's pretty conservative when it comes to things like that.
yeah. I remember when I was young, we were told soft drinks are bad, juice is good. Now, since then, we've learned that juice is not good either, because at the end of the day, juice is still sugar. Yes, it may have some nutrients, particularly if it's like, a raw, unprocessed juice and maybe it's mixed with some vegetables, that might be a bit of a compromise. But if you're drinking sort of normal juice, apple juice, orange juice, that kind of stuff, it is still sugar, and that is still a bit of a strain on your body. So we don't want to be doing a lot of that. But I tell people the worst thing you can be doing is having liquid calories. I mean, liquid sugar, basically.
Let me ask you this question. So I know in our program we don't do bananas until we get to maintenance. Why is that?
So depending where you're at, if you're relatively healthy and you're working out, a few times a week, then having all kinds of fruit is fine. But most people who arrive at our program have had, in many cases, years of going up and down, blood sugar up and down. So by the time they arrive, a lot of time their insulin is high. They don't even know it. And eating the fruit can be enough to set up cravings and make them want more food. So we want to stabilize blood sugar, and then eventually they can add these things back in once the cravings go away.
So why does Jessalyn really recommend berries?
Yeah, so berries are extremely healthy. They have so many health benefits, but they are very low glycemic. They're one of the lowest glycemic. You can eat 2 or 3 cups of strawberries and you're getting some fiber and some antioxidants, and they taste good, but they're not going to spike your blood sugar the way a banana or pineapple would. And again, I'm not saying bananas or pineapple have no health benefits. If you're healthy, great. Eat lots of those things. They're good food. But if you're not, also the fruit has been bred today to taste much sweeter than it had even 50 years ago. An apple today tastes very different than an apple 50 or 60 years ago. The sugar content is higher than it used to be. So that's another thing. Eating fruit can be quite addictive.
I know that you're not like a huge fan of juicing. Is that because of the insulin, like with fruits and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I have no issues with people, juicing vegetables. And if you wanted to add a little bit of like half an apple just to help it taste a little bit more palatable, I don't have an issue with that. I do believe we should be consuming most of our food in its whole form, but there is a place for juicing, particularly for people who have digestive issues. But I've juiced, it is time consuming, a lot of cleanup to do. You want to buy organic fruits and vegetables because you're going to be consuming a lot of it. So for most people, juicing isn't practical on a daily basis, but if you want to juice, go for it.
Yeah, but from what I understand, I could juice 4 or 5 apples and drink that, whereas I could have eaten one apple and been full.
Right. And so, as I said, for juicing, stick to your vegetables and add in a little bit
Yeah.
of fruit for flavor, because you're right. To make 1 8-ounce glasses, you need quite a few apples, and you would never in nature sit down and eat 5 apples, right?
So in our program, some people go through a little bit of detox. What is happening when you're eliminating sugar from the body? What's actually happening?
Yeah, so we work really hard in this program so that you don't suffer a lot. A lot of programs, they cut you off your sugar and all that, and you really suffer because you physically, psychologically. We have things in place to really mitigate that. I'm not going to tell you it's a walk in the park, but you're not going to have the so-called keto flu. You're not going to feel horrible because, we have some things to make sure your electrolytes are high. A lot of times when you eliminate sugar, you eliminate a lot of water. And when you're eliminating water, you eliminate electrolytes. And sometimes you're not feeling very well. So we set you up, we bring in some really good foods. The psychological piece can take a bit of time, but again, we have foods that are sweet, but they're not from sugar. They're healthy alternatives to help you get through this.
I did some studies when I was younger on attention deficit disorder because I had it. And one of the things I read is children with ADD particularly have a sugar, or more apt to have a sugar addiction, but more apt also to have a sugar allergy, meaning that their body doesn't do very well with it. I'm not saying they're necessarily allergic to it, but I can tell you that I remember coming in the kitchen and eating spoonfuls of sugar. I mean, there's something wrong with that. Actually, out of the sugar bowl,
Right.
eating spoonfuls of sugar, coming home and eating a bowl of cinnamon toast crunch or 3 or 4 or 5 bowls of it with sugar on top. That was a that was something that I would do all of the time. And back then we were in the fat free phase, and so we were in the fat free phase and the high sugar phase. And so I don't know how effective those diets were for people.
Right. And it may be that one of the reasons I think you've gotten away with this, I mean, because you probably have more cravings than most people. You, as far as I know, have been an exercise fanatic for a very long time. And so when I was telling you about the Snickers bar, if you were to go and jog or lift some weights, the only way to get fuel out of the muscle is to actually do some kind of weights. So if you were to do, I mean, it's still not good to eat a Snickers bar, but if you're going to eat healthy sugars and you're going to exercise through cardio and particularly some weights, then your blood sugar is not going to spike that much. You're still not going to feel great. You know, you're still struggling with it, but you probably have been able to get away with it. If you had these same cravings and responded to them and were a couch potato, you might have diabetes by now, or you might be on your way. So it's because
So
you exercise, and even though you might have sugar cravings, as far as I know, you're not giving into them all the time, and you eat a lot of healthy foods.
I do. And do you guys have Sonic in Canada?
The drink?
The fast food place,
Oh,
Sonic?
no, we don't have that.
So we have a fast food place that serves, and I actually find this disturbing a little bit. They serve slushies with nerds in them and Skittles in them, and people go after school and get these huge. It's a slushy with Skittles floating in them and nerds, and then they actually make the whole drink. It's basically they're drinking sugar.
Wow. Sugar upon sugar.
Put sugar upon sugar.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, Rita, what you've told me, I need to cut out sugar, so I'm just going to start drinking Diet Coke.
Our friendship is over.
Let's talk about that. So I know you, I've known you for a long time, and I know that you are very passionate about subjects, but I don't know that I've ever heard you get upset with me. But one time I mentioned you, and you said you were actually kind of upset with me. You said, "Do you know how long it's going to take your gut to heal from that one Diet Coke you just drank?" You said, "I would have rather you gone and had some Bluebell ice cream." Tell us, what is aspartame doing to our body?
I mean, I think a lot of people, have start drinking diet drinks with the best of intentions. They know, I mean, most people know sugar is bad. They may not know fully why. And so they think, well, I'll just have a diet pop or diet yogurt or whatever people are eating. And there's a couple of problems with it. First of all, these things were never designed to be into our body, but it tastes sweet. And when something tastes sweet, but the brain doesn't get the proper calories that it associates with sweet, your brain is confused. And some people who are very sensitive will actually produce insulin even if they drink a diet drink, because they have so many years of messing with their body with sugar and all kinds of things. So the taste of the sugar or the sweetness is enough to stimulate the pancreas. So they're producing insulin, but there's no blood sugar to come down. So they actually feel even worse. There's also some evidence that some of the sweeteners, particularly the sucralose, can change your gut bacteria. They've shown this studies in animals. And ironically, it makes you crave sugar. So what happens is you drink the diet pop and your blood sugar drops because your pancreas released some insulin. And what happens after is that then you start craving, and you might drink a diet pop and then go have some sugar. I mean, some dessert after. And so it's really important that, it's actually better. They did one study where they had one group of people drinking diet soda, and the other group had with sugar. The group with the diet soda actually gained more weight than the group with the sugar. So you're messing with your whole gut flora, and you're messing with your brain when you're doing the artificial sweeteners. We're just not designed to have that. And they seem to be addictive. I've never had them myself, but you don't hear people say, I drink one Diet Coke a day. They usually drink many Diet Cokes a day because there's something very addictive beyond the caffeine compared to regular drinks.
I actually have a friend of mine, her mother passed away, and she said her mother would drink sometimes 12 to 16 of them a day.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about okay, because I think a lot of people are confused on what sweeteners are good and what are not so good,
right?
Because there's a lot of mismarketing out there.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about a few of them. So the old-fashioned one from Sweet and Low and Diet Coke is aspartame. So what is aspartame?
Well, it's a little bit controversial, so I don't really because there's a lot of myths floating around out there. We do know it is an artificial sweetener that is made in a lab. And do
Okay.
we know the long-term effects? Do we know if it's as horrible as it seems? We don't. We do know it doesn't help people lose weight. We do know that, it's not resulting in anything successful. So whereas stevia, which I'm sure we're going to talk about in a minute, there's evidence that stevia not only helps you in terms of it's a good substitute, but it may actually help your blood sugar intrinsically. So putting stevia is actually beneficial in your body, whereas aspartame and ACE-K and sucralose are not beneficial.
Okay, so I wanted to go through those. So ace, how do you say it? Ace flumane or something like
It's
that? Is that
ACE-K because it's, yeah.
okay? Ace K. So that Ace K is in a lot of products.
Yeah, they're all artificial sweeteners. I don't know much detail specifically on that one, but I know it's an artificial sweetener. The
Okay.
biggest thing it seems when you change your gut microbiome, you don't have cravings. You know how you said you crave things, sugar? It's not you that craves them. It's the bacteria in your gut, and they run
Really?
your whole body. And so when you're changing the gut flora from the artificial sweeteners, it's literally designed for you to crave sugar, which is
This is fascinating to me. So
horrible.
when I did the video a couple weeks ago about my protein binge in Puerto Rico, most of it was sugar alcohol, and my stomach is still healing from that. Sugar alcohol can put me in the hospital, and so can xylitol. Can you talk to us about why?
Sure, yeah.
I know
Let's talk about.
a lot of people are eating ice cream and candy with xylitol and sugar alcohol, and some
Right.
people have no problems. It kills my stomach.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about what some good alternatives are. So first, I'll just list them. So first, I mentioned stevia. Stevia is a plant that goes back hundreds of years from South America. Now, I know some companies are starting to change it a little bit, but fundamentally, stevia is a plant that is significantly sweeter than sugar. If it's not the greatest quality, it can have a bit of an aftertaste. I know, Emily, you've got one. Maybe you can link it in the comments later.
But Rita, there's a problem. Some stevias don't say, you have to look at the back because it'll say stevia, and then you look at the back and it'll say blended with sugar alcohol and erythritol.
Right, we'll get to those in a minute. So right now with
Okay.
sugar, you bring up a good point though. A lot of times you'll see stevia and then maltodextrin or stevia and something else.
Yes.
So the stevia should be alone. As I said, you can link to one in the comments after, because there's one I know you like that's very good. The problem with stevia is sometimes it's not usually spoon for spoon, so it's a little bit difficult to measure.
Yes.
It can have an aftertaste unless it's the one Emily recommends.
Yes.
And so it's a bit of a challenge for people, but it does seem beneficial in terms of your health, and it's a fairly good substitute. The sugar alcohols is a good point. The one that most people are familiar with is xylitol. I don't like xylitol for many reasons. Number one, it's so toxic to animals, particularly dogs, that I don't even like the thought of it being in somebody's house, but that's one issue. Many people have trouble with xylitol because it can be difficult on the
Oh,
gut. Having said that, some people can do xylitol no problem. So if you don't have a dog in your house and you don't have issues digesting it, the sugar alcohol measures one for one, the xylitol. It tastes fairly similar to sugar, and you can bake with it. So it can be a good substitute. Personally, I prefer erythritol, which is another sugar alcohol. It doesn't have those side effects. Most people can do it. I know not some people can't. Generally, you're going to see erythritol combined with monk fruit. Monk fruit is a completely natural sweetener. Again, none of these have calories. They're good for your body. When they're combined together, they measure one for one. It tastes good. Erythritol and monk fruit, I put it in my tea or in my smoothie, or I can bake with it. It can be a little pricey. That's probably the one downside. But aside from that, it's a phenomenal option. The other thing is something called allulose, which I don't know anything about. We don't have it in Canada yet. But early evidence is saying not only is allulose tasty and good for you, but it may change your gut flora so that it stabilizes your blood sugar better. So again, we're now looking at sweeteners that don't just taste good, but actually can help with the very issue the reason that we're using them. So, still a bit more research to do on allulose, but Splenda, I think, is putting allulose in some of their products. So that tells me that, it must be, they've obviously done some research. We know it's safe, it's grass. So, it is something, hopefully, as I said, we're going to see it. Again, a little bit pricey. Some of these things can be pricey. So those are the sort of the main sweeteners. I mean, we can talk about things like maple syrup and honey and fructose. I mean, we need to talk about fructose. Fructose a few years back came out and everyone thought, oh, this is great. It comes from fruit and it sounds like really wholesome. So the problem with fructose is it has a low glycemic index. So a lot of diabetics were using it. Unfortunately, it's a low glycemic index with a cost. It can be hard on your liver. And so over time, people who consume a lot of fructose can end up with something called NAFLD, which is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And so it looks like everything's going fine. Their blood sugar is okay. Meanwhile, their liver is being impacted. One of the worst sources of fructose is agave syrup. A lot of people will see it in products and think, oh, it's the quintessential health product. Agave is 75% fructose, which is even higher than corn syrup. We've all heard high fructose corn syrup is really horrible. It is. Agave is even higher in fructose. So consumers.
No, that's what in America, that's what they make skinny margaritas with.
Is it?
So people think
right.
But
that's sort of a natural thing that they started in Mexico. I don't want to say things I don't know about, but I'm guessing that's where it started. So that's okay. It came from there originally and you're drinking it, but it's now being added to a lot of foods because people think it's healthy, but it's not. It's not healthy. It's high in fructose. So you really have to be aware. Marketers have one goal to get you to buy their product, right? We in our company have a goal to make you healthy. And those two goals can be opposed. So opposed to each other. So that's why we're here to educate people. We're so passionate about educating people because if you go to the store and you don't know when you pick up that product, that health product, and it says agave and you think, oh, good, there's no sugar in there. How can you make a good choice if you don't have the information?
absolutely, Rita, everybody's on here talking about how knowledgeable you are. It's making me feel kind of dumb.
Come on. Emily, you are amazing. Oh my gosh. You go on to all these different things and you go deep and you learn everything and then you get bored and you move on to the next thing. And
I don't know. Like, tell me about this. So I don't want to ask you this question. I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but a lot of my friends have switched from Diet Coke to Coke Zero. Does anybody know what the difference in Diet Coke and Coke Zero is? I think people think Coke Zero is better.
I think it's different sweeteners they're using. They're still all the same artificial sweeteners. Someone
so they're the same.
Pipe up on the comments if they know the difference. But
okay, because I wasn't sure about that.
Yeah, and there are. Let me just jump in here and toot Zevia's horn. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Zevia. It's a soft drink where they're using stevia. They used to use stevia, I think, in erythritol, but then they switched to just stevia, and they make it taste pretty darn good, especially if you're used to drinking soft drinks and you want to switch. So we're not saying that you can't have enjoyable products. It's really important to be able to have substitutes. If you're drinking 7 or 8 soft drinks a day, and we just take that away, that's going to be really hard. But if you can switch over to something like Zevia, and there's lots of healthy alternatives, then you're going to feel okay about this.
I'm going to be putting the link in the stevia that we recommend here in a little bit. I'm actually going to be calling these guys to partner with them and see if we can't get a better price for you guys on it, because it is pricey. But I do want to say one thing. There's so much you can do with the stevia. So, for example, some people like the sweet and salty. If you do, and let's say you're on our maintenance program and you're eating the purple popcorn, some people actually like to put some sea salt and stevia on that. You can. I joke because everyone's like, well, what does that shake taste like, or what does that taste like? I'm like, well, for me, it all tastes like stevia because I love stevia. So it hides anything that I don't like. But there's a lot you can do with stevia. And what I had told you guys before was the drink that I drink with the stevia in it has actually reduced my cravings. And it's been said that it can actually help with your blood sugar. So I think that's really interesting.
Absolutely.
All right. So I hope this was helpful for you guys tonight. As some of you are kind of thinking about possibly joining Just Lean In. Rita is the director of our program. She put our program together. Every week we're going to be coming on live talking about things that we feel will be of good value to you. If you find this information interesting and you'd like to learn a little bit more about what we do and having your own personal coach, please reach out to myself, Jen Rue, or Rita, and we can do a consultation and match you with a coach that will work with you every day and find out what works for your body, your style, and your needs. And then we also have a maintenance program that we are working on as well. Rita, was there anything you wanted to add about
Yeah,
sugar?
I touched on this briefly and I didn't get to expand much. So I'll just talk a bit about honey and maple syrup. So again, obviously in the weight loss part of the program, we don't really advocate using sweeteners because it can derail you. But once you hit maintenance, we don't want to say you can never eat anything sweet again in your life. Honey, like raw honey, is tremendously healthy. It's antimicrobial, especially something like Manuka honey, like real Manuka honey has been shown to kill bacteria. It is so potent that there are hospitals where they have the Manuka honey infused into the bandage because it really helps with wound healing. When you take it internally, it's actually been shown to kill H. pylori, which is the ulcer-causing bacteria. It's also really good for strep throat. So, and nothing will stop a cough better than honey, particularly buckwheat honey. So, we learn how to incorporate that in our maintenance phase of the program because these are health foods. There are really good benefits. They're not health foods that you can guzzle all day long. There are ways to do it to mitigate the damage, the blood sugar spikes. Maple syrup, think about it. Maple syrup comes from a tree. So that tree has roots going deep into the ground. You are getting so many trace minerals in there. And there's some anti-aging components in maple syrup. So again, we want to be able to incorporate that into our maintenance program. Coconut sugar is a low glycemic, healthy alternative. There are options, and we teach you in this program how to bring back delicious foods into your diet that it's not super difficult to do and it's tasty and your body knows what to do with it, right? Are we eating honey 7 days a week? No. We find a way to do it that works for your body, but we really want to bring in these healthy foods into your body.
Yeah, and I was thinking next week we can have kind of a sugary theme. Post your pictures if you have questions. Is this good? Is this not good?
Sure.
Ingredients are so important. And you might see your body get different responses to different things, inflammatory responses to different things. I noticed the other day that citric acid bothers me. I don't know why, but it does.
Yeah.
I don't even know where that comes from or what that is, but I drank something that had that in there and my joints started hurting. So it's really good. The healthier you get, the more intuition you're going to have about what you're eating and how it's affecting you. Rita, we have two kinds of people on this call, the sugar people and the salty people. So it's funny, I talked to 4 different clients today or prospects. 2 of them have sugar issues and the others have, in Texas, it's Tex-Mex.
Right.
Chips and queso,
Yeah.
chips and queso.
Sure.
So we definitely need to have a call on chips and queso at some point. But we appreciate you guys. Again, this is Rita. My name is Emily. And don't forget to just lean in. Everybody have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Just lean in. You'll never be alone.